Good.
Watching them every day.
What a mess.
I'm gonna let. Oh, go ahead.
I just feel like this Lyerly, the first one up, is just smoking dope and not having a clue, and he's just going to get yanked out by his hair.
That's not a you problem. And come on, don't you want to watch the show at this point?
Maybe, but sadly, I guess what we have to do is store his crap, right?
Yep.
For how many days?
15 days if you hand him the notice, 18 days if you post it on the door.
All right, we handed it, so 15 days. Now, probably, I've heard, a good practice is just to lock it up inside the unit and just instead of pay for a storage. But
do you have a garage?
Probably not big enough for a 2-bedroom house full of crap.
Well, if it's less than $700, you only have to hold it for 2 days before you destroy it.
Then I just leave it in the house, right? Just lock it up in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be painting and doing stuff on the outside and just leave it sitting in there on the inside. Right. I figured he's probably going to break in anyway and try to get his crap back.
That's usually what they do. They break back in. I always tell landlords, leave a door unlocked. I'm going to let all the rest of the people in here so they don't. Okay. Here we go. Bye, baby. Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm sorry I took a phone call. You know how that is. I'm famous for doing that, taking a phone call. I know we got lots of stuff going on this week. Yee. I'm still letting people in just so you guys know. And deep breath, the state law that allowed 90 days for additional protections for tenants during the payout period of COVID so that the state of California could have an additional 90 days to pay all of us landlords that haven't been paid yet, ends at the end of this month. State law ends at the end of this month regarding COVID protections. And then we can anticipate seeing county and city restrictions in LA and San Diego. As far as everybody else goes, for the most part, we will go back to BC status on July 1st. BC meaning before COVID, not before Christ. So LA County has extended their tenant protections till June of next year. LA City has extreme protections for tenants with COVID. So if you're in LA City, buckle up, it's gonna be a ride. And hopefully all of us landlords get paid out by the end of this month. Yay. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, we can expect to see some additional moratoriums in areas that are heavily populated with tenants. So a lot of apartment communities. We can anticipate seeing some lingering COVID protections in those types of cities and areas. The reason being is heavily populated areas come with heavy protections for tenants because they're the majority and we as landlords are the minority. But we can expect to see some additional protections as moratoriums are allowed to be written regarding the repayment of COVID funds. So it's going to go back to, in a very rapid fashion, and I'm hoping and praying it doesn't get too bad, because in the beginning of COVID, just so you guys all know, I wanted to rip out my hair. The city of Long Beach was coming up with their own moratorium. The city of Torrance had their own. I mean, just taking the South Bay area, just the South Bay area, okay? Just saying. They had so many moratoriums just in the South Bay area, I wanted to rip my hair out. Each individual city was able to come up with their own moratoriums regarding COVID. With that being said, starting July 1st, we go back to that. Now, the county of LA is pretty restrictive. So if a city has more restrictions than the city would control, if the county, whatever controls you the most is what controls you. Okay. So if you bypass the city and you're safe, then you're stuck with the county. See how that worked? So if you're not stuck in a city moratorium, chances are you're going to be stuck in a county moratorium if you're in Los Angeles. In Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange County, Ventura County, Inyo County, Kern County, for the most part, we are back to business as normal starting July 1st. BC, before COVID. And then tenants are going to have 1 year to repay the rents owed during the COVID pandemic. After that year, then you can sue them in small claims court. You're never going to be able to evict for those funds that happened during the transitional period, the protected period, yada, yada. One of the key things that I want to talk to you guys about, and I'm going to write an article about this and see if Aglo will publish it. I'm going to write a couple articles. I'm feeling feisty. And if you guys all know this and I'm just being crazy, tell me, please. Okay. Is everybody aware that until October 1st of 2025, COVID has rewritten the way we do accounting? If you guys know this, then tell me, yeah, Patty, we know. Don't dwell over this. Because if we don't know this, I want to make sure everybody knows that all rents incoming have to be applied to the month they were received in, and any overages go to future payments. Nothing goes to the rears unless the tenant puts in writing what months they are to be applied to. This law is in effect until October 1st of 2025. I hate it. It sucks. It's ass backwards from the way I've ever done accounting, and I can tell you the why behind it. I know this. I know why they're making us do it this way. I know. I'll make it simple for you guys. We can only go back 12 months on a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. Can't go back any further than 12 months. Got it? So if they're controlling that new incoming rents go to the month that it was received and a forward credit, it pushes back all that money that's sitting there, so it becomes over 12 months in a rapid fashion. So just so everybody knows, in the event you get incoming funds, they must be applied in the month they were received, and any overages go to future months. It only goes to rear months owed past due if the tenant puts in writing, please apply this to April of 2020's rent. That is the only way you can apply it somewhere else, is the tenant has to tell you in writing. If they vacate and they owe rent during the pandemic, you have to refund security deposit unless they have other damages there. Did everybody know about the accounting law? Yeah? No? Did we know it was in effect till 2025? That one hurt. Is anybody out there? Yay, Arlene's out there. Okay, somebody's out there. Okay, so you guys didn't know. Okay. You guys knew that that was going on during the COVID pandemic though, right? We just didn't understand that it was until 2025. Also, I'm going to remind you guys this until I'm blue in the face and it's just me trying to be me. COVID is going to leave. We will go back to business as normal. I'm glad, because I like to tell you guys things you don't know, because that makes me know I'm doing my job and helping you. So thank you for telling me. We didn't know that one, Patty. Okay, what was I going to say? Squirrel. We were talking about rents. Oh, this is what I want to say, and I talk about it a lot, you guys, and I'm trying to beat it into your heads. Forgive me. We cannot talk to other landlords that are inquiring about our tenant, okay? If they owed any money or anything happened during COVID, they are protected. We can't talk about it. So when you're doing a landlord verification, here's your response. Thank you for mentioning the COVID pandemic. We don't talk about what happened during that time. Did you have any other questions for me? You can't tell them that your tenant got all the COVID money and didn't pay you a dime. You can't tell them that the tenant didn't pay you anything. You can't tell them that they lied, cheated, stole, blah, 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 blah. They are protected during COVID. So keep your mouth shut. I don't care what you ask. Okay? But what you say is what's going to get you in trouble. So when someone's inquiring from you, I need you to be tight-lipped. Got it? Please send your request over in writing. Why do I suggest you guys do that? So you don't say the wrong damn thing. There's a method to my madness, I promise. And then in writing, remember, if it happened during COVID, we don't talk about it. Period. End of report. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. It can be considered retaliation against the tenant if you discuss what happened during the COVID pandemic because they were protected. Okay? So you don't speak about late payments during COVID. You don't speak about them not paying you. You don't speak about them getting $100,000 from rent relief and then stealing the money from the landlord. You don't talk about anything that happened during COVID. When another landlord is inquiring about your tenant. Okay? I know you guys know that one because I try to talk about it a lot because it's going to be easy to forget as time goes on, but they can hold us to this to 2025. So we're still responsible till 2025. I saw somebody, I think they want to ask a question. It came by quickly. What if we get a decent new government or president? Well, then we'll change that when we get to it, Val, but until then, no. Arlene, can I ask verbally? What are you asking verbally? Erica, hello. What if the lease says all payments are to be applied to the oldest amounts due? Doesn't matter what your lease says, we have to follow the law. The law says we have to apply incoming funds in the months it was received and any overages go to future months. It can only be applied to rear months if the tenant puts in writing where they want that money to be applied to. Got it?
Patty?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, it's Arlene. I understand what you're saying if they overpay. For example, and it probably will never happen, but let's say the tenant writes a check for July and writes July rent on the check. In August, instead of writing August, they write July again. So that would just go towards August rent? Or would you tell them?
August, because you can't apply it going backwards. You can only apply it future rents.
Right. So, but would you have, it would just be an error. It wouldn't be like they didn't pay August rent, correct?
Correct. You would be forced to put it to future months and it would apply for August.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that, okay, that I understood. Okay, thank
Not
you.
a problem. And I'm trying to help you the best I can so everybody's clear on how it has to be done until October 1st of 2025. And my guess is sometime before that date, they'll make a law changing it permanently so that we won't be able to do it the way we've always done it. Why? Because the way we've always done it benefits landlords, not tenants. Everybody get that? The way we do our accounting, applying any incoming rents to the most outstanding past due balance benefits landlords, not tenants. So they will most likely rewrite the way we do our accounting permanently. If they don't, great, hey, I'm in, but just be prepared for it. It's most likely what will happen. They're paving the road for us. They're telling us what they're gonna do in the future. Got it? I know that sucks, but don't shoot the messenger. I recently received a tenant verification form. I asked the tenant has paid on time. I checked the box yes, but their boilerplate form is not COVID oriented. I understand. I understand. Be careful with your tenant verification forms. Remember, you can say, yes, they paid rent on time. You could say, yes, their rent was this much. Yes, they lived here from this date to that date. And I'm sorry, I can't answer any other questions in regards to this because they could be considered, what's the word I'm looking for, you guys? They could be considered, I'm sorry, one more time.
Harassment.
One more time.
Harassment.
it could be considered harassment, but that's not the word I was looking for.
Discrimination.
Something, we just want to protect ourselves. So yes, it is considered retaliatory. That's the word I wanted. Sorry, blonde. Sometimes it takes a while. Okay. So it's just a better business practice. And remember, all of us professional property managers out there, landlords, you always want to ask this one question. Okay. One question. Would you rent to them again? If a professional property manager responds to you with this statement, there is something most likely wrong there that they can't talk to you about. I would most definitely rent to them again if they meet our criteria, or I would rent to them again only if they qualified. Those are red flags to me because that means something is going on and they can't tell me what's going on, but something's going on there. So pay attention to those. Only if they qualified. Of course we would, they must meet our criteria. If you hear one of those two things, chances are something's cattywampus and they can't talk to you about it. So utilize, those should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and now you're looking for a reason to deny based on your criteria. Okay? If you hear those words, that hair right here on the back of your neck should stand up nice and tall and say, find a way to deny them, find a way to deny them, okay? Pretty soon they won't even let us run credit reports. That didn't pass, but they are talking about passing that on a level for subsidized housing. So Section 8, low income, tax credit properties, and the reality is their credit sucks anyway. That they're in this low income housing for a reason. I shouldn't say there because that's a very bold statement. Most likely their credit is going to suck anyway. Most likely. There we go. That way I'm not speaking in definite terms, folks. But yeah, there is talk of them removing them from allowing us to look at credit reports. It's getting ridiculous, you guys, ridiculous. Can you say that the tenant damaged the property to a future landlord? Yeah, but you want to be careful. And this is me talking to you. Okay, so listen to what I'm saying. If you're trying to get rid of the tenant that's in the property, you want to help them out the door. So a lot of times we don't give them negative, if you will, feedback when someone's inquiring, but we'll be very matter of fact. These are the questions I can't answer for you. They lived here from this state to this state. The rent amount was this much. It was increased to this much. They are now moving. They did give me notification that they're moving, and I'm not going to talk about anything else because it's a personal opinion. That's what I wanted. Personal opinion. And we're not allowed to give those here at our office. So would you rent to them again? If they qualified, if they met our criteria, that's when you guys go, thank you so much. Have a great day. Find a reason to deny them. Find a reason to deny them. Okay. Got it? We clicking? Okay. Sometimes it takes me a while to give you guys the verbiage, like a couple minutes, but it's just because it's still spinning in there. It'll come out. Sometimes it comes out so fast I can't repeat it. Val knows this too. Would I rent to them again? I checked yes, but the real answer would be no. I understand. And what you need to say is if they meet our criteria. That's your way of telling all the rest of us there's a problem here without saying there's a problem here. So it's just a cheesy way to do it. And we've been utilizing that in corporate America for decades, just so you know. Sorry. If nobody's told you before, sorry. That's how we all communicate with each other.
Hey, Patty, I have a question.
Yes,
This is Danielle from Roadrunner.
I recognize your voice.
I figured. I call you a lot. Anyways, we have a house, single family home, not covered by the TPA. The last tenant left a lot of ghosting in the house.
I'm sorry, left the what?
A lot of ghosting. It's when you run the fireplace and it leaves all these like black soot marks all over the walls. It happened. It went through the HVAC system and like it's in every room.
Mhm.
However, he was there for 5 years. The owner wants to charge him for part of the paint. Can we do that?
So let me tell you guys something. And I would love to see your guys' faces when I tell you this story.
All right, hold up.
I rented a house. I rented a house back in 2006, 2007. And then I moved out in 2008 because I was going to buy. The market was really good. Okay. So 2006, 2007, I lived in a house, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 3-car garage on an acre, great house, never been lived in, brand new construction. Okay. So I moved into this house and I didn't notice right away, but it got cold in the winter time. It was in the desert. I mean, we're in the 30s. So you turn on the heater. The heater wasn't working right. And it was doing something weird. It would shut off. It just wasn't working right. So I called the landlord to talk to the landlord and he sent somebody out to look at it. Do you know that I rented a house that ran off of propane and the builder put in a gas heater? Do you know that that put out toxic fumes that could have killed me and my whole family? Do you know that it left that black, nasty soot all over all my furnishings, my photographs, everything that I hung on the wall? So when I took a painting off the wall later, when I wanted to move, there was this black mark from it. I could have died. Okay. We were blowing our noses and black stuff was coming out. We couldn't figure out why. Okay. Do you know what my landlord did? Nothing. Do you know that he didn't fix the issue either? He just told me not to use the heater, use the fireplace instead. What? What? So when you have issues like that, where the heater is doing something it shouldn't be doing and leaving marks on furnishings and personal belongings, don't charge that to the tenant. That's not the tenant's fault. The tenant didn't do that. Are you going to tell me I used the heater wrong just by turning it on? Make sense? Okay,
What
somebody
if
said,
they used the fireplace and the heater at the same time?
then that would cause soot damage. I never even lit my fireplace in that house. It was still brand new build and the cap was still on the gas log lighter. So I could prove I never did that. If they're running the heater and the gas at the same time, or the heater and the fireplace at the same time, just so you guys know, that can cause a creosote buildup. What happens is it's too warm in the house instead of cold in the house. So it draws the smoke out of the chimney and through your house rather than up the chimney. So if that ever happens to you guys and all of a sudden you have a fire going and the house is full of smoke, open the front door, even in a snowstorm. It usually will then put cold enough air in the house that it'll chase the smoke right up the chimney. If it's not, your flue's shut. Open the flue and leave the front door open. It'll take it all right back out again. Okay. So with that being said, if he was misusing the fireplace, that would be damage. But the reality is that happens even if you're sitting in your house, it gets too warm in the house. No joke. Then the smoke starts coming out this way instead of going up the flue. Make sense? I hope this makes sense to you guys. So if you ever have a smoke backup and you got a fire going, open the front door. Chances are that cold air coming in will then chase the smoke right up the chimney and you won't have to deal with that. And if it's not going right up the chimney, you need to open the flue. The flue's closed. But yes, I hear what you're saying. And if they did that, then that could be considered tenant caused damage. And Val said something. Can't I sue him for my brain damage? Yes, right? I have never sued a landlord in my life. And I have been in some pretty sticky wickets as a tenant where I had every right to. Come on, they installed the wrong heater at a brand new build. My family was blowing black stuff out of their noses. We didn't have a fireplace going. That's straight from the heater. Okay. I never did that. It's not my intention. Not my intention at all. I don't want to hurt someone else because they're making wrong decisions or bad decisions. And they ended up losing that brand new house to foreclosure anyway. So I guess in the end of it, karma came and bit them. It's fine. I paid my rent. I was a good tenant. I left. I was a good girl. Okay. I even got my deposit back in full. If a rental house has an old fireplace, can you forbid them from using it? Not really. You can ask them not to. You can have them sign additional disclosures saying if they do, you're not going to be responsible. But the reality is you should have that chimney inspected. You should have that firebox inspected. Because what if they use it anyway, even though you told them not to? What if then it causes some kind of damage or the house catches on fire because your firebox was so old that the grout came out of it and it wasn't working properly, blah, 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 blah. You're just in a much better position to have your fireplace inspected, have that creosote removed at the same time, and then you don't have those concerns. I actually own a house where I had something similar happen. I asked them not to use the fireplace because I was very, very concerned about it. I wrote it in the lease contract. Tenants were really good. And then we started talking about the fireplace. I immediately sent somebody out there to inspect it and make sure that that was up to par before they were going to start fires in there. So definitely something you want to do. If you're in an area that has colder temperatures and they are burning wood fires, I strongly recommend that you have your chimney swept at least every other year, if not once a year. That creosote buildup is no joke. I've seen fires happen because of it. It's a real thing, folks. So you want to make sure you're having your chimney swept to avoid potential loss. I removed a fireplace in a rental. You only need to provide some sort of heater, but this fireplace chimney was falling apart. Yeah, it can happen. It can totally happen. And you would need to provide heat in the house. A fireplace is not considered a heater. And we all know if the tenant doesn't have heat, they don't owe rent. So absolutely, you can make modifications based on whatever the circumstances may be. You don't want to do that in the middle of an active tenancy. What do I mean? I'll give you an example. You don't want to say, okay, the fireplace is broken. I'm not going to fix it. So I'm giving you guys a notice to not use the fireplace. You just did a reduction in services. Are you lowering their rent? Because if you're not, they can sue you. See how that worked? A reduction in services means you have to lower the rent. And if you don't lower the rent for the reduction in services, the chances are they're going to sue you. And not just on the reduction of services. If they were smart, they'd call it bait and switch. Because take it for what it's worth. That's exactly what that is. I baited them in here. I got them in here. They've been living here. Now I'm switching it. Bait and switch. Okay, baiting them in and then changing the amenities. Can't do it. How do you calculate how much to do as a rent reduction? In overall, look at it this way. If you rent a house with a swimming pool, the rent's about $100 more a month. Agreed? Than one without a pool. So if they don't have use of the pool, that's how you do that. Okay, if it had a heater, or I'm sorry, a fireplace, and now you want to remove that amenity, you need to see what the differences are with and without a fireplace. That you're not going to see much of a difference, but you still have to give them an amount. If they lose the loss of a bedroom, it's easy to calculate that out using the same process and procedure based on a current market analysis. There is a way. There's a way to discount almost everything. I've seen it all, folks. But that's what you do when you want to do a reduction in services. You need to do a reduction in rent. It may be very minor considering whatever the amenity is, but you still need to do it. Of course, the landlord could get tenants permission to remove, right? In my case, it was empty. I still added an electric kind of decorative fireplace in that space. Yeah, I mean, let me give an example. Had a house with the swimming pool. I want to say this house was in Rancho Cucamonga. And this was 15 years ago. And it wasn't my house. I was a property manager for the company that managed this house. And the property manager called me one day and said, "Hey, Patty, I think we need to do something. The owner just got a report back from the pool guy saying that his swimming pool is shifting and therefore it's cracked. And now there's a leak in the pool. He doesn't want to have the cracks fixed. It's too expensive. And they can't determine where it's leaking from. So he'd have to do a leak detection test and then a this and then a that and then blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the day, the pool is still sliding through the backyard. So right away, that's a structural engineering problem right off the top of my head. That is over the pool man's pay grade, if you will. We need to get a structural engineer in here and a leak detection team to find out exactly where it's leaking and what's going on. So did that, found out that the whole pool was sliding, that the foundation, the backfill dirt wasn't done properly, blah, 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 blah. The landlord had the chance to either demo out the pool and put in a new pool or remove it entirely. So we talked to the tenants at that point and asked the tenants what they wanted. They rented a house with a pool. They really wanted a pool. I talked to the attorney. We ended up lowering their rent almost $300 a month because they had a pool and a spa, this big outdoor patio. It was an entertainer's dream, if you will. So we had to discount the rent quite a bit so that we wouldn't be accused of a reduction of services, not a reduction of rent or bait and switch or anything along those lines. Those tenants actually ended up vacating when their term was over, which was fine. We re-rented for more money without the pool and everything went fine going forward on that property. So sometimes you just have to do a little finagling, if you will, to make all the pieces fit in the puzzle properly. Okay. RSO, remove package from unit, but new tenants paying for parking. I want to assume that says parking. I got you. Okay, Arlene. Hey, I'm blonde. Sometimes it takes a while. RSO, remove parking from unit, but new tenants paying for parking. Do you reduce rent by amount new tenant pays? Most likely. It helps you be in line with fair housing. Yeah, I got what you're saying, but you get what I'm saying? If fair housing were to investigate you of why you're charging separate for parking versus rents, they would want to see everybody that isn't paying for parking is in this price range and everybody that is paying for parking is in that price range. That way you're not discriminating, blah, 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 blah. Fair housing wants you to see that you're treating everyone even, Steven, and equal all the way across the board. So all the way across the board. A tenant that has a view of the pool might pay more rent than a tenant that has a view of the trash dumpster. That's normal. An upstairs unit may be less expensive than a downstairs unit. That's also normal. Why do we charge more for a downstairs unit? Because it's easier to move in and move out. It's easier to carry groceries. So some tenants don't want upstairs units. So sometimes we will find ourselves advertising an upstairs unit at a discounted rate for that reason. I hope that made sense. Remember, fair housing is going to look at you mostly in a scenario by what you're doing with your other residents, how you're treating everybody. Fair housing just doesn't look at one thing, honey. They look at everything. I'm actually considering writing an article about how to do your tenant screening and not using the first come, first serve, and actually use a different method. But I have to write it in detail because if you mess it up, you make yourself more susceptible to litigation. You make yourself more susceptible to fair housing being extremely strict with you. So if you follow fair housing's guideline to the T, you're less likely to be flagged for discriminatory issues. If you don't follow fair housing's guideline that is put there for a reason, then you have to have very strict screening processes that you can't deviate from. If you deviate, you're fired. I don't know another way to say it. In my land, it's always you're fired. So that's how I look at it. You're fired. You're going to be fired if you deviate. So don't. And if you're an independent landlord, look at that as you're going to be sued. So it works both ways. But if you implement a system that doesn't use the first come, first serve tactic in your screening tactics, which you can do, but you need to be very cautious because it can make you more susceptible to fair housing inquiries. I have a lockout coming up. Yee, I like lockouts. How much notice does the tenant get before the sheriff shows up? Okay. I'm going to talk in slang. If somebody doesn't know what this means, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to educate you. And yes, I'm going to say some things that you wouldn't expect me to say. So let me explain to you this. The writ of possession is Willy Wonka's golden ticket. It's what we all want at the end of an eviction trial because it's the legal document that gives us our house back. Okay. It's called the writ of possession. Okay. Willy Wonka's golden ticket. The writ of possession is what we send to the sheriff because it's a court order to go kick the people out of that house. So that's what the sheriff needs to see in order for them to go process the kick out order, if you will. The sheriff then goes and posts a 5-day GTFO notice on the tenant's door. Yes, I just said that. 5-day GTFO, meaning you can't fix this, get the out, okay? GTFO notice means you can't fix this. You have 5 days. So what the sheriff usually does is it'll say you need to be out by 6:15 a.m. on the 23rd. And I'm just giving you a number. But they'll schedule the landlord to meet them there a couple days after that. Okay. The reason they schedule the lockout for a couple days after is they're trying to avoid a conflict at the property. Make sense? Usually when the tenant posts the 5-day GTFO notice on the door, and that's not really what it's called, so don't refer to it that way with your attorney. They'll laugh at you, I promise. When that 5-day notice goes on the door, one of 3 things happens. Your tenant vacates because they don't want to deal with the sheriff. So if that gets posted on the door, you want to start watching or having a neighbor watch for you to tell you if the tenant moves out in the middle of the night, because there is a 50-50 chance that will happen. And now here comes the bad news. So everybody sit down. Take a deep breath with me. I am noticing a tenant tactic here at the law firm, and it's coming at the worst time. We are seeing more and more of this, and I've noticed more and more of this in the last few weeks alone. Tenants are not filing an answer. They're going through the eviction process. They're letting it go to judgment. They're letting everything happen. And when the sheriff comes and posts that 5-day GTFO notice on their door, that's when they go back to the court, file an emergency ex parte hearing to set aside the judgment that was made, recall the writ of possession, and allow them to file an answer. So what I'm seeing as a tactic from tenants is they're leading us as landlords to believe that they're winning their eviction case. Okay. I'm not saying you're not winning. I'm not saying you're losing, but it gets us to a height that's like right here of, yeah, we're going to get them out. And then this happens and it sinks us right back down, kicks us in the teeth. So be prepared. If that happens to you, be prepared. Know that they waited till their Hail Mary play to fight. Instead of fighting at hello, they're fighting at goodbye. Okay? Don't take it personal. It's just a new tactic that we're seeing. But mentally, it's messing with us as landlords because we are being led to believe that we are succeeding in our eviction case, that the tenant is going quietly into the night. Do you guys have tenants right now that would go quietly into the night? No, you don't. So don't expect them to. If they do, hit the easy button. Easy. But for the most part, we're now seeing them fight once that 5-day forcible is put on their door from the sheriff. Then they're going into the court, they're filing emergency ex parte motions to set aside the judgment, recall the writ of possession, and allow them to file an answer. For the most part, the judge is allowing it. So just be prepared if you're in an eviction that that's another tactic that we're starting to see come forward. Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but it's the reality of what we're dealing with. So if this is the new way tenants are going to fight us, so be it. It's the new way they're going to fight us. How would the tenant know to file all of this? Would I need to be served? The tenant knows to file all of this because they've talked to their tenant attorney. Okay, that's how they know. The tenant advocate groups, that's how they know. They're just telling them, just wait and fight once you get the lockout order. And at that point, we're already spent money, spent time, and are ready to get our house back. So it feels like we're getting kicked in the teeth at the last minute. Don't let that bother you. Don't let that bother you. Okay? It's just a new tactic from the tenant. So be ready for it, is what I'm trying to say to you. And remember, you could actually show up at a sheriff lockout and the tenant could hand you a notice saying that they filed for bankruptcy, and that would affect the eviction. The sheriff would not lock them out at that time. There would be an additional court hearing. There is ways for your legal counsel to get around that, but it's also another stalling tactic tenants use. So just be ready for it, is what I'm trying to say. Until you are standing there with the sheriff and they are kicking the people out, or you have a vacant house, don't get all giddy and excited, okay? Because we tend to build ourselves up and then we get let down and we get frustrated. Who's winning? Landlords? I mean, if you don't pay the rent, you don't pay the rent. If you're in a material breach of your lease, you're in a material breach of your lease. If you have police reports on your property, then you have police reports. But what they're doing, instead of fighting when they're supposed to, is they're waiting till the last minute and then starting the fight, okay? So it doesn't necessarily cost you more time. What it does is it builds you up emotionally to think that you're gonna get your house back. And then it doesn't happen, so you get frustrated, you get upset, you get angry, and that's their way of kicking you in the teeth. So don't let it bother you. And I've always said, until the locksmiths change in the locks, I know I don't have my house back. Okay, that's when I know I'm safe. I'm safe. How long would the creepy tenant get to stay if they pull a bank, a BK, or some other trick? It depends on what they do. If they file a BK and a motion to set aside the judgment, we would then file a motion to stay, most likely. Sorry, I gotta cover my asset. We would most likely, your legal counsel would most likely file for that motion to be set aside because a judgment was already made in this ruling. Okay, but it's going to cause you about a 20-day delay. and then they'll reschedule your lockout as far as a bankruptcy goes. If they're then filing an ex parte motion to set aside the judgment and it gets granted, then what's happening is instead of filing the answer before we could default them, they're going to allow them to file an answer now. And then we're going to set trial. We're going to go to trial. We're going to duke it out, whatever's going to happen. And then the court will make their ruling. And then we'll go back to asking for the writ of possession and getting that writ to the sheriff's office and scheduling a lockout. So when that happens, you can anticipate spending the money to do the lockout at least twice. Because you're going to do it the first time and spend that money for the lockout. And then what's going to happen is they're going to pull that. And then you go to trial and fight that. And then you're going to have to pay for a lockout again at a later date. Most likely. Any other questions? And if you guys want to unmute yourself, please feel fine. Oh, we got one. Hang on, hang on. Oh, I'm going to need some more caffeine for this one. Hang on. Property in Larso, tenant moved in last March, but she hasn't given the copy of the required renter's insurance until now. I sent a notice to request the copy with the June payment. She did pay the rent, but didn't give the renter's insurance copy. Serve her a 3-day curable breach of covenant that she's in violation of her lease contract because of that. I'd contact legal counsel, make sure you can do that in Larso, but they still have to follow the rules. David, this question is about liability insurance. In your opinion, is it better to buy expensive insurance or cheaper insurance? Do you take a big risk by buying cheaper insurance? What insurance company do you recommend? I'm going to be extremely honest with you. I've had 2 insurance companies in my professional career with all of my investment properties. One was Allstate and one was State Farm. At one point, and I don't know if this is still the case, so just listen to me, Allstate stopped insuring homes in California because of the fire risk. This was a decade ago, maybe. So anything new that I purchased, I couldn't add to my Allstate policy because they were not signing on any new housing coverage in California at the time. Okay, that may have changed, just saying. So they offered to go to a third-party insurance carrier and get me covered, and I'd still pay Allstate, but it wouldn't be with Allstate's insurance. I didn't like it, so I left and went to State Farm. I'm with State Farm now. I don't have any problems or any issues along with any of those types of things. But I do get multiple discounts because I have my business insurance, my homeowner's policies, my car insurance, all under the same umbrella. So with that being said, you're just going to have to fight for what is the best fit for you. I don't care if you use a name brand insurance company or a no name brand insurance company. They're all backed by the Federal Insurance Act or whatever that is that protects us as landlords. What I would be concerned about is the coverage they're offering. Do I have loss of rent coverage? Because you can get that, folks. Loss of rent coverage. You can get unlawful eviction coverage. Okay? You can, if you have a residential dwelling that you don't live in, you want to make sure you have a landlord policy because it's less expensive at the end of the day because it doesn't have any coverage for personal belongings. Why? Because those aren't your personal belongings. So you don't want to pay for it. Okay. So when it comes to insurance, you can buy cheaper insurance. Just make sure you have the coverages you want. Unlawful eviction coverage is a great one. Mold damage, a great one. Unpaid rents by the tenant, great one. Loss of rent coverage, perfect. I've utilized mine a couple times. So just a couple things that you wanna watch out for is making sure that you have those coverages. I wouldn't be so concerned because it's not a name brand insurance company. I'd be more concerned that you have those coverages, and they have laws they have to follow. So, and there is protections for us, the consumer. Okay, I hope that helps. Thank you, David. Any update regarding landlord, federal and local grants for landlords that were not paid, but tenant not under housing is key projection, just stop paying. So what Andrea is talking about is, did they pass that law that said if tenants either didn't apply for the money or applied and were denied, that it would still pay the landlords? The answer to that question is that has not passed as of yet. I am watching it like a hawk. So are a couple of the apartment associations. As soon as that passes, I will be sending out an email blast letting everybody know, because we all need to stop some of this financial bleeding that has hit us from the pandemic. We're still suffering because of it. I know, I feel it. Some of these landlords in some areas haven't received rent since the beginning of the pandemic to date. And unfortunately, they're in areas where they can't do anything about it. That's even worse. I mean, the way I see that one is I see the government is stealing our investment properties right from out from under us. Because how are we going to continue to hold on to them without any income? I mean, and we're having to pay taxes, mortgage, and insurance. Whew. There are a few of us out there that are still experiencing and being affected by this. I know, I'm one of them. Does anyone have experience with plus minus mini split units? AC heat, thank you. Insurance tip, thank you, Val. If your unit is vacant for more than 30 days, you may need additional coverage. If your unit is vacant for more than 30 days, your insurance company can cancel you. So here's me talking to you, so please pay attention. If, and this is what happened to me, I had a tenant I was evicting, okay? They destroyed my house. My mom rented to them, God love her, okay? I told mom, I know you need the rent money, honey, but I wouldn't rent these people a storage unit, mom. And she said, leave me alone. Your dad just died and I need the money. I went, okay, mom, why don't you let me know when you have a problem and I'll help you then. It took about 8 months. I came home from work one day and mom was pissed. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, her fist balled up like this. I said, what's going on, mom? She goes, my tenants. And I said, phew, I don't want to hear it unless you want my help. She said, I want you to go bitch on them. I said, okay, mom, I'll go bitch on them. What's going on? So she told me what was happening and said that she called her to tell her to come pick up some of the rent money. She had the rent money. So we went to the property. I made sure that I had my carbon paper. You guys remember that carbon paper? The clipboard with the carbon paper in it? Well, I prepared 2 3-day notices together with a piece of cardboard, carbon paper in the middle, because that way when I wrote it out, I was making a copy at the same time. It's how we write notices in the field, folks. So while she's telling my mom her BS story of why she hasn't paid all the rent and she'll have the other rent next week, I am counting furiously and writing a 3-day notice for the difference. So my mom looks at me, I'm done, I'm ready to go. My mom is standing there and I get out of the car and I walk over and I say, here's your 3-day notice. And she goes, what do you mean a 3-day notice? I just spoke to your mom and told your mom that I was going to pay her the difference on such and such date. And I said, I know what you told her, but you're still in violation of your written contract. And here's your notice supporting that. I handed it to her. My mom stood there going, as I went back around and got in the car. And my mom's still standing there going, and the lady's like, but I just told her. I don't care what you told her. You're in violation of your written contract. I repeated it again. And then I looked at my mom, who was still standing at the hood of my car with her mouth gaping open because she was shocked at how I handled the situation, and said to her, get in, we're leaving now. My mom got in the car and she goes, wow, you were a real bitch, but you were not rude. You were matter of fact, to the point, and specifying the facts. I said, yes, Mom, it's called professional management. I was doing my job. I wasn't mean to her. I wasn't rude to her. I was very matter of fact. I'm sorry, you're still in violation of your written rental contract, and here's the notice notifying you of that. I didn't say anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't discriminatory. I wasn't rude. I didn't raise my voice. It's professional management. Okay. Just so you guys know. But yeah, I will never forget that. My mom was saying, I want you to go bitch on her. I'm like, okay, Mom. Will there be attorneys that will help landlords recover unpaid rent, or do we have to flock to small claims court and not until 2025? Tell me you love me.
We love you. Come
Pick
on.
your face.
Yes, I want.
Is somebody trying to ask me a question? I didn't hear you. I see you on there, Michael.
Bad area right now.
Okay, so wait until you're in a good area and then we'll try to take your question, okay? Okay, so will there be attorneys that help landlords recover unpaid rent, or do we all have to flock to small claims court? Here's what we learned, okay? This is a good one, folks. You know how they deemed it consumer debt? All the COVID rents, consumer debt. We were all happy about it because it can cross state lines. In order to be consumer debt, you have to be licensed. So it is no longer deemed as consumer debt. Paying attention? The monies owed during the COVID pandemic are no longer deemed consumer debt because we as landlords are not consumers, and we don't have business licenses and credit licenses and all the stuff that consumers are required to have. Therefore, it can't be considered consumer debt, and it went back to landlord tenant debt. So it is assignable for the most part, and landlords will be able to help you. And if they vacate your unit, the rent becomes due on demand. So if they're no longer in possession of your property, you can go to small claims right now and file the case against them. You do not have to wait the repayment period. That only applies if the tenant stays in possession. Got it? So you could sue in small claims right now because you have a vacant unit, your tenant vacated. So you could do that. For the most part, I'm going to be honest with you guys, we're starting to see a slowdown in the courts. Landlords are getting their teeth back, and we're all attacking at the same time. We talked about it, you guys. We knew this was going to happen. We knew the courts were going to be inundated. And it's not just all with evictions. A lot of landlords, God love them, haven't been getting paid this whole time. They started the notice in the process against their tenants, so their tenant vacated. They knew they were in the wrong. They ran scared. Okay, because they're no longer in possession, do the small claims case against them. Anybody have a question? Sorry, somebody had their mic open. I was just closing it. I did. I was a good girl. Where will I find the information about the COVID accounting on payments received until October 25? Anna, I can go pull up the civil code for that for you. I wrote it on my desk. It's on a sticky note because I'm going to write an article about it and send it to AGLA. I'm going to write 3 articles, one about the way we do our accounting. And I have 5 things I want to tell as many people as I can. We have to do our accounting their way until 2025. We have to be careful what we say of what happened during the COVID pandemic until 2025. I say just change your brain to not talk about it, okay? I want to talk about different ways we can do screening rather than first come, first serve, but it gets tricky, so I'm pushing that one to the side, trust me. I think those are like 4 things that I really want to write articles about just because they affect all of us, you guys. We need to know what's going on. One of the attorneys told me 2 weeks ago, no, The accounting law stays till 2025. So I asked them for the civil code. They gave it to me. I looked it up and I found it and they're right. So I would be more than happy to text you that. If you text me, as soon as I get back to my desk, I will text you the civil code, but I will forget by the time I get there if you don't send me a text message. Okay. Any COVID related laws, but there is a civil code for it. I checked any COVID related case law so far. Not one. Not one. Scary, huh? Scary. And then I'm seeing some very heavy litigation in a case that I would assume that would be no litigation regarding. So if you're in LA City and you're going through an eviction, all of us need to do whatever we can to help support you and give you the strength that you need, because it's no joke. LA City is no joke. Okay. They are ruthless. They are relentless. Those attorneys are manipulating everything right now, in my opinion. How can somebody stay in possession of a property and owe rent? What are we doing here? I have my own opinion on the matter. I think that, do you guys remember a couple months ago, and I know my sisters will remember this, a couple months ago, they tried to pass a law saying if we wanted to sell our house, that we had to sell to a tenant advocate group first. They had first right of refusal. That law didn't pass, but that law told me something. It told me that governmental agencies and nonprofits are trying to obtain possession of real property for profit. What did I say in simple English? They want to own rental houses. So do those cities that want to own all the rentals in those cities now control us landlords so that we can't get our rent money? Are they forcing us to foreclosure? I don't know. I don't know the answers, but it's making my mind think. Make sense? This is what gets all those little wheels turning in my brain that goes, oh, watch, they're not going to be able to do this, or, oh, watch, this is going to happen next. Please send me the info on COVID accounting for payments received until October 2025 info. Not a problem. I will get you the civil code where it explains that. Like I said, I wrote it on a sticky note. It's on my desk. It's the only sticky on my desk because I want to write an article about it. So that's how I remind myself. But yes, our legal counsel has confirmed that until October 1st of 2025, any incoming rents are to be applied in the month they received, and any overages are to go to future rents unless we get in writing from the tenant of where to apply those funds. Can we add any protective language in a lease contract regarding future non-payment of rent yet? Nope. I don't know what language we would offer that would override a government's law. Make sense? I mean, it would be great, right? If all of us had in our lease contracts prior to COVID something that said, and if a major disease takes out the nation, you as the tenant don't have to follow those rules. You follow my rules, you still have to pay your rent. I don't know that there's anything that we could put in a lease contract that would protect us or prepare us from the government changing the rules. I don't know of anything that you could ever put in writing in a lease contract that would override the law. I'm picking my words carefully because I want you to understand what you're asking is probably never going to happen. And please remember this, just because you put it in your rental agreement doesn't make it legal. A guarantor. I love the fact that you use the word guarantor and not cosigner. Okay, you guys eliminate the word cosigner from your vocabulary. You know the difference between a guarantor and a cosigner? A cosigner can live on the property. A guarantor cannot. You're welcome. I don't know that we could ask for a guarantor to step in the event that the rent wasn't paid due to a government law. Make sense? We still can't enforce the guarantor to pay if the government says they don't owe the rent. I just let a tenant beg me to not charge her a late payment for June rents. I reluctantly agreed, but said this was a one-time deal. What would Patty do? WWPD, what would Patty do? Honest truth, I'm sorry, I can't waive late fees. If I waived it for you, I'd have to waive it for everyone else because I would be discriminating in the eyes of fair housing if I changed the rules for you and not for everyone else. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you. That's what Patty would say. Why would Patty say that? It's been embedded in my brain for the last 20 years. If you don't have that kind of power or control, then let them know that. I don't have that kind of power and control. If I change the rules for you, according to the Department of Fair Housing, I have to change the rules for everyone. Otherwise, I'm discriminating. If you waive the late fee the very first time, then let them know. The first time is a courtesy warning. Nothing wrong with that either, but you must do it for everyone. Could you please repeat how tenant payments should be applied when they are behind in rent? No, it isn't when they're behind in rent. They changed the law until October 1st of 2025. Any incoming rents coming in must be applied in the month they were received. So let's give an example. If the tenant gave you a check for $5,000 in the month of March, $5,000, and their rent is $1,000 a month, and they give it to you in March, you can apply $1,000 to March, $1,000 to April, $1,000 to May, $1,000 to June, and $1,000 to July. You cannot apply it back to December's rent of last year when they didn't pay you. You cannot apply it to the most outstanding past due balance. That is gone. It is off the table. It doesn't exist. Okay. All rents incoming must be applied in the rent month they were received, and any overages go to future months. If the tenants want to pay on something in the rears, they have to put in writing where they want that money applied to. Got it? And I'll go pull the civil code. Can a lease prevent firearms on the property? No. Is this a Second Amendment issue? Yes. Tell them they must send their firearms to me. Val, you're so funny. A great example of that would be, what if they're in law enforcement? Are you going to tell them that they can't have their firearm? Make sense? You can't take a detective or a police officer or a prison warden or a sheriff and tell them you can't have your firearm in my home. In fact, it is a violation of the Second Amendment right, and the only place that they can enforce a no firearm law is in federally funded programs. Why? Because the federal government pays for that. So because the federal government pays the rent, the federal government can tell them what they can and can't do there. We cannot. Got it? All right, if nobody has anything else, I'm gonna end this for today. I feel bad because I want to run to my desk and go get that civil code for you guys, but you're just gonna have to send me a text message and I'd be more than happy to get that to you. Hold on, Belsie, I see you had something else. What happened with the areas? How could we collect them? Notices to pay rent according to the month they use. I have to use different forms. Any other route? For April, May, or June's rent, you should be able to do a 3-day notice that has specific language on it right now. You cannot put any rents over 12 months on any kind of a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. After the pandemic period is over, they have up to 1 year to pay you back the money that they owed you during the pandemic period. After that year, then you can sue them in small claims court and get a judgment against them to garnish their wages. All of this takes place while they're still living in your property. If they vacate your property, then the money becomes due as soon as they vacate. You can turn around and get a small claims judgment against them as soon as they move out or as soon as they're evicted. But while they're in possession of the property, they are protected. Got it? When they move out, they lose their protections. I hope that helped everybody. If anybody has any more questions, let me know. Oh, I love my sisters. You guys are awesome. Thank you to all of you. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this every week. I appreciate you more than you know. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, I got about 3 or 4 articles I'm going to be working on here in the very near future. So you may see some of those coming about in your local apartment association magazines. All right, you guys, you have a great day. Enjoy. And you know how to hunt me down if you need me. Bye.